Hi, this is Kendra from Pencil and Pigment, and welcome to Vlogoween Day 8. And for today's video, I wanted to talk about some of the things that you can put in your illustration to spice it up and to add to the context of what's going on. Maybe you're telling a story, maybe something else is going on. Just some additional ideas if you're starting to get burned out. There's only a few days left. It's like the final push before the end of the month. And if you wanted to include some unique things, then let's talk about it and go over some ideas. Now, obviously, one of the most common things to have birds sit on are branches and trees, but there are other things birds can be sitting on. So like telephone, electrical wires that are outside, fences, tall and short. They could be branches of shrubs and little tiny bushes like rose bushes, things like that. They can be on rooftops, patio furniture. They can be in the middle of a meadow, a lawn, a park, a field, any sort of surface. It could be a cow pasture a bird is sitting in. Think about a bird in your hand. If you want to include anatomy a little bit, you can have birds sitting or laying down in your hand. Architectural elements, maybe you're more into urban sketching and you really want an excuse to draw flying buttresses. You can put a bird in and around near one of those, or any other things like a bird sitting on a gargoyle or a lion statue, or any other sort of elements that you see in really unique buildings that have carvings and fountains and things like that that birds could take advantage of. Maybe they're, splashing in the fountain, or maybe they're sitting on the sculpture in the center of the fountain. There's tons and tons of things you can do and include if you want to sort of keep it interesting, keep it relevant. Tell a story. Maybe your bird is in a cage. Maybe it's in a library that's spooky. Like, you could tell a whole thing. Maybe it's a witch's familiar and it's by a cauldron. Like, where you place your bird totally changes the narrative and the style and the feel of your illustration and your painting and whatever you are using as a medium for this challenge. Now, when it comes to branches, because those are like the most substantial thing you will see most of these birds on, I'm just going to grab a brown. Most of them are brown, but there's other elements and things you can include on a branch. You can include moss, you can include lichen, you can include other little tiny branches, leaves, flower buds, little fruit coming to bear. Maybe it's, a cherry tree. If you're drawing a small bird, you may want to figure out the size of the fruit. Maybe the bird is the size of the fruit, maybe it blends in, maybe you're doing the 12 Days of Christmas and it's a partridge in a pear tree. Like, there's so many things you can do when you go to place a bird on a branch. Now, your branch can be at one angle, it could be foreshortened. It can start small and it can kind of get bigger as it comes towards you. As it comes towards the viewer, it spreads out and gets wider. The bird can have its feet around the branches depending on what angle it's going. Now, a lot of wood may have like burls, like scars from where branches have been cut. There could be bark grains in the wood, depending on the color of the tree. There could be tons of different colors. There's that rainbow bark tree. I'm going to throw up a picture. I don't remember the name of it offhand, but I know there's a rainbow bark tree because I've shown my daughter before, and she and I had a great conversation about it. So there are some really, really unique trees. You have to think about what birds maybe are in that area that would land on a tree, such as that one. This is dark sepia, so I'm including a couple different colors within my wood grain here just to add some depth and intrigue in the wood. Now, some trees get really ashy and like they're pale gray. You know, some get fungus and different things growing on them, and some of those things can be really orange to yellow, depending on what exactly is growing in that tree. Mistletoe is something that grows in trees that you don't want actually growing in your tree, but that is something you can add. That is another element. Little berries, things of that nature. Leaves, you can denote the time of year depending on if you have little branches coming out and there's, you know, little flowers and buds and things. You can denote time of year depending on the color of the leaves. So if they're really, really pale green, it's spring. If they're dark green, it could be midsummer. If they're starting to turn pale yellow, oranges to reds, then it's becoming fall. Maybe there's no leaves and it's winter. Again, all this adds to your illustration, tells a story. You know, branches don't have to be straight. Sometimes they corkscrew and move around, and that's really cool to denote and draw too. Like little corkscrew branches that do weird things. They don't have to be in a straight line. There are vines that climb up trees and take over. Ivy is a really good one that's pretty invasive. So if you want to incorporate a different element within your branch, maybe the ivy is grabbing the bird too. Like you can get really, really fun and interesting with it. Maybe there's icicles and frozen bits hanging off your branches. You want to denote snow. You want it to be cold. You want it to be icy. You can have the whole thing be gray or black and white, and then the only thing in color is your bird. Let's try and denote. I'm going to denote like a branch that's been clipped. And tree, typically there's rings, like trees have rings in the branches. That's how you know how many years old everything is. You count the rings. But there's cracks and stuff within the ring. So, and then it kind of grays out maybe, gets real pale, looks kind of ashy, kind of pasty. And then it goes into the color of the wood and it gets healthy again. Some cuts can be new, some cuts can be old. You can look in search engines what branch cuts look like on trees, like how that affects the tree, what that looks like. This would be my version of a branch that's been cut. Again, I kind of want a dark color. I enjoy having sepia as a color in my convenience colors. It's such a nice dark rich color. So you can denote branches that have been clipped. If you want to get into some interesting things, you could have your tree that has grafting, like an apple tree that has, you know, 4 or 5 different types of apples on it, and you can denote the grafts of the tree, of the branches being sliced and other things being sliced in and then taped up with your bird in that tree. Like maybe you're talking about something else in your story, about biodiversity or something, and maybe there's beetles and maybe there's a whole habitat. Maybe you have a whole mini ecosystem going on within this one tree and there happens to be a bird there. Like there's so many stories and things you can say, like pine cones and other strange elements you can add. It could be an olive tree, and then, you know, maybe it's about peace and there's a dove or something. It could be winter holiday and there's like bristles and those types of things. It could be like a willow. Corkscrew willows are such a fun tree. My parents used to have a massive one in their backyard, and it was like so many birds love that tree, but it just got so big so fast and it had to be removed. It was causing damage. So anyway, long story short, all the things you can include for your bird. So maybe the branches on this one kind of spiral, Like some grains go straight, some kind of spirals, some get knots, some get burls, some get like, you know, maybe there's like a chrysalis or some sort of thing going on with a butterfly hanging off your tree. Maybe there's just like a whole story of spring and life and different things taking shape within your tree that could be interesting to denote and show your viewer along with a bird. A bird adds to the story. Maybe the story is about the tree. I really want to add some of this green. Really want some green in here. And your tree branch can be all kinds of different colors. You look at like red bud where the bark is kind of red. If your bird is sitting on wood, I mean, wood comes in so many colors. It's red, it's green, it's brown, it's black, it's blonde. The green would be poplar, red would be like cherry wood. There's just like, it's your imagination. So if you're just sticking solely to your subject matter, that's a bird, that's absolutely fine. If you want to include some context, if you want to include other things going on in your story, that's absolutely a way to go. Maybe your bird's sitting on an alligator in the middle of a creek, or a swamp, sorry, or a crocodile in the river. Maybe your bird is sitting on a hippo, like maybe your bird is on another animal, and that is a way to include other animals in your Birdtober, or just add some more interest and some other things to incorporate. Maybe your bird is sitting in a Christmas tree and you really want to draw ornaments. That's a way to go as well. You can work on water drops, rain. Denote that on the leaves, maybe denote that on the bird. Drawing wet birds is really fun. All their little feathers kind of get clumpy, stick together. Birds tend to look like they're scowling. It's a look. Maybe there's a little snow on your bird. Like, think of all the elements if your bird is outside. Think of all the options if your bird is inside. If you really want to work on spaces within your illustrations, like you want to include like bedrooms and drawings like that, where, you know, you really like original characters at their desk doing things or living their life. Maybe they all have pet birds, or there's, you know, a bird's trapped in their house. Birds can literally be thrown into anything, is what I'm roughly trying to get at. You know, they're not just sitting in a nest. They're not just on a branch. Birds can be doing literally anything. You can show the bird with its eggs. You can show the bird, you know, with its food, in its mating stance. Some of those are hilarious, like the birds that dance and flip their feathers up in really unique ways to attract mates. Can be a lot of fun. You can include so many different things, like a bird sitting on a stick. There's no reason you can't do a bird like on a stick. Dude, that's hilarious. I don't know why it's hilarious, but it just kind of is. The idea of a bird just kind of sitting there doing its thing, and it's on a stick. So it could be simple, it could be interesting, it could be, everything could be pointing to the bird. You could, if you wanted to work on calligraphy, you could draw a bird that has like a quotation next to it. I mean, your bird could be solely made out of letters if you wanted to get really abstract, or, you know, something like that. But you can include quotations and things if you want to work on other stuff. If you want to draw murmurations in the background with a larger bird in the front. There's so many ways and positions you can put birds in to include some of the other things you really enjoy drawing. Like if you're just trying birds for this month, then you're like, yeah, okay, birds are all right. I don't know if I'm going to include that, but I really love drawing XYZ instead. Figure out how to add birds once in a while to your XYZ to enhance that story, to enhance the interest. Maybe you're doing a seek and find and you've decided in all your illustrations you're going to hide a bird, and it's up to the viewer to try and find it. Like, that's a fun way to include birds and make it interesting and grab the viewer's attention. It's just like figuring out, if there's something you want to say, figuring out how to say it. If there's a position you want to put the bird in, if you want to try wood grain, if you want to try doing stuff like that. I mean, here, let me get out a pen. Using the same page. If you want to fine liner your branch and figuring out how you want your wood grain to go, how you want that to look. Maybe you have still pieces in here. Don't forget your shadows and your highlight. So I'm saying the sun is coming from this direction. There's more shadow here. And then you figure out how you like your wood grain to look. Have some dark, have some light for the viewer. And then when you have your bird, make sure it's reflected of where the light is shining, hitting the bird, and then the front part of the bird is going to be in shadow. And if you have claws and one going back, we're saying this is a 4-digited bird. You could do it this way. Okay. Bird legs. There's ways to do this. It can be done. And you can do it with tons of different mediums. Just remember, like, shape. Most branches aren't completely straight lines. Unless you're doing like an electrical wire or a telephone wire, you kind of want, like, you want some stuff. It's a branch. It's nature. Nothing's going to be perfectly smooth. Maybe there's, you know, little buds and things coming off of it. And little broken branches, little sticks. You know? Make sure you have your sticks coming off. They're going different directions. Can we see that? Alright, we can kind of see that. We see what I mean. Make sure you have different things going on. You just don't want it to be perfectly straight and uniform. You know, if you want to add weird textures within your branch before you then add the bird, figure out what you're going to do with the feet. You know? Kind of doing it this way, the bird's facing forward. I'm just making sure this is still on my camera a little bit. All right, we're still here. Good. And maybe there's one that goes back, and then the branch kind of comes around. And then we go into the bird leg, okay? So you still have to think about texture and all the different things. Maybe this branch splits off. And that's a thing branches do. Okay? All the things you can include as you get into your bird. Things to think about. If you're drawing a very specific type of tree, does that bird live in the area that that tree grows in? Is that a thing? Are you putting a bird from Africa in a tree that's from Japan? Like, think about some of this. You know, you're drawing a Japanese maple. What bird are you going to put in there? That's a factor to think about. Or you could think about how migration works, how some birds travel, or maybe you're telling a story of a children's book of a bird traveling the world and it sitting on lots of different trees and checking out the view from all these different places. Think about your story. All this adds context. You know, you can kind of do the folk art style of completely symmetrical branches doing the same thing with leaves doing the same thing. If you want to do a design, maybe you're doing birds on a different surface other than paper. Maybe you're designing and painting plates and dishes. Like, that's something to think about. Symmetry looks really, really nice on plates sometimes. So if you're doing like paper cuts and lino cuts, think about the shape Think about small and large. Think about squeezing. Think about sort of, is it coming towards you? Is it moving away from you? Is it just right in your flat eyes view? Like, what are we looking at here? Is there depth? If you're doing comics, like little comic strips, every panel should have a purpose. I know, this will be really hard when talking about comics. So make sure that if you're adding something to the bird for context, is your bird Woodstock and it's on the ground and it's talking to Snoopy, like, just, you need the line for the surface of the bird sitting on the ground, but you don't need tons of extra stuff. The panel is about the conversation between the bird and the dog. It's not about where the bird is currently sitting. That's not what you need to tell. So think about that one in terms of comics and stories like that. Add enough that it adds to the story, but not enough that it becomes like distracting or takes away from the original subject matter. I know this can be a lot, and maybe you just want to focus on birds and it's just bird is your main thing. I've drawn a few birds that seem like they're floating in space. Like the one from yesterday. The one from yesterday was floating in space. So I could have drawn a branch or a stick or a telephone wire or something else. Like maybe my bird is holding a baton, maybe my bird is holding a fish. I could have added something in here that the bird is holding on to. Maybe my bird is holding on to another bird that's flipped. I'm getting into MC Escher territory. Like maybe there's, you know, birds are grabbing birds and they're in flight and, you know, they're swinging each other around. That could be a thing too. Like, just when it comes to illustrating birds and thinking about all the different elements, maybe you don't want your birds to float in the illustration. Maybe you want to add branches and think about some of the textures, designs, shapes, colors that branches come in with all the stuff that can be on a branch. All the stuff. And that really can add to the story, to your illustration, to what you're creating for the viewer to look at and see. You can direct, here's the thing with branches, is you can direct the viewer's eye to your bird depending on how you do your branches. Sometimes branches go off the page and it leads your eye off the page. It just depends. Maybe you just want a portion of a branch. Maybe your bird is just sitting on sort of one of those bird rests in a bird cage, but you just want to include the rest. Okay, maybe your bird's sitting on a sofa and you've just been hankering to draw some paisley sofa cushions. Like, just think about what you want to include. You know, if your pet bird is sitting on your pet dog and your dog's looking up at your bird, that could be a really, really sweet illustration that's really enjoyable for people to look at and sounds really cute. And people like stuff like that. So, and plus it'd be personal to you because it includes both your pets. I'm just saying, you can have your bird sitting on literally anything that you want to include. Maybe you're more into graphic design and you've designed a series of logos or things for cups and letterhead and all this stuff. Well, the bird could be on the desk. The bird could be sitting on the cup. All these things you can think about. When it comes to illustration, you decide the narrative, the story you want to tell, how you want to place your bird, what you want to place your bird on, and what that says about your bird. I hope this video helped. I hope this video gave you some new ideas, maybe a new perspective, maybe some additional motivation to keep going for this last push through the last few days of this challenge. Thank you for watching. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.